Have you ever wondered why you always want more? Why that purchase, that delicious food, or that moment of fun never seems to be enough? Why, even after getting everything you wanted, you still feel a strange emptiness inside? This is one of humanity's oldest questions. And Nietzsche, one of history's most provocative thinkers, had an answer that will change how you see your own life. Get ready to discover why the pursuit of pleasure might be the biggest trap of your existence, and more importantly, how to escape it. We live in the era of instant dopamine. Your phone buzzes, your brain releases a small dose of pleasure. You see an advertisement, you feel like buying something, you open a social network, get a like, feel momentary happiness. But how long does that happiness last? A few seconds? Maybe a minute? Soon you're looking for the next stimulus, the next hit. It's like you're a lab rat pressing a lever to receive pieces of cheese. Except the cheese is getting smaller and smaller and you're pressing the lever faster and faster. Our modern world is a perfect machine for creating addiction to small pleasures. Tech companies hire neuroscientists to make their apps more addictive. Supermarkets study how to position products to awaken our desires. Advertising uses our need for pleasure against ourselves. We're surrounded by an entire system that profits from our constant dissatisfaction. Every notification, every offer, every stimulus is calculated to keep us always wanting more. It's a billion-dollar business built on top of our inability to stay satisfied. The problem is that our brain was made to adapt. When you eat chocolate every day, it stops having that same special taste. When you binge-watch series non-stop, they start getting boring. When you buy clothes every week, each new piece excites you less. It's like you need increasingly larger doses to feel the same thing. This isn't your fault. It's exactly how our mind works. Scientists call this hedonic tolerance. You need more stimulus to reach the same level of satisfaction as before. Now imagine a cycle that repeats thousands of times in your life. You see something that promises pleasure. Your brain creates expectation and anxiety. You achieve that thing. You feel quick satisfaction. Then you return to the normal state, but now with a higher reference point. You need something more intense to feel the same thing. And the cycle starts again, only more demanding each time. It's like going up an escalator that's going down. You climb faster and faster, but you stay in the same place. And the escalator only speeds up going down. This pattern doesn't just happen with small things. It dominates big life decisions. People who constantly change partners looking for perfect passion. Professionals who always change jobs hoping for definitive satisfaction. Influencers who need more followers, more views, more recognition to maintain the same feeling of success. Consumers who accumulate objects thinking the next one will complete their happiness. All trapped in the same illusion. The idea that there's a pleasure out there that will finally be enough. The cruel truth is that this definitive satisfaction never comes. And the more you chase after it, the more distant it seems. It's like trying to fill a bucket with holes. No matter how much water you pour, it never gets full. The problem isn't the amount of water, but the fact that the bucket has a hole. So maybe the question isn't how to get more pleasure, but why am I trying to fill a bucket with holes? Maybe the problem isn't the amount of pleasure you have, but the fact that you've made pleasure the center of your life. To better understand this, we need to go back to the ancient Greeks. They already knew there was a profound difference between pleasure and happiness. They had two different words, hedonia, which was momentary pleasure, and eudaimonia, which was a flourishing life full of meaning. For them, a person who only sought hedonia was like someone living on crumbs when they could have a complete banquet. It was wasting the richness of human experience for something much smaller than we were capable of achieving. They understood that pleasure was the seasoning of life, not the main dish. Pleasure is like fireworks. It explodes in the sky, everyone looks. It's beautiful for a few seconds, then the night gets dark again. True happiness is like a campfire, less spectacular than fireworks, but it warms, illuminates, lasts for hours, and allows you to do other things around it. A life built only on fireworks is a life that spends most of its time in darkness. And in the dark, you can't see where you're going. You can't plan, create, or build something lasting. You can only wait for the next show and hope it comes soon. Think about the people you most admire. Are they known for the pleasures they had or for the things they built? Is Oprah Winfrey admired for the parties she threw or for the media empire she created helping millions of people? Is Elon Musk respected for moments of fun or for the companies he founded trying to solve humanity's problems? The people who mark history are those who found something greater than personal pleasure. They discovered there's a deeper satisfaction that comes from creating, contributing, and transcending their own desires. And this satisfaction doesn't diminish over time. It grows and multiplies. But our culture does the opposite. It teaches us that life is a sum of pleasurable moments. That whoever has more fun, more comfort, and more pleasant experiences is whoever lives better. This created an entire generation of people addicted to entertainment. People who can't stay 5 minutes in silence because boredom is unbearable. Who need music, series, games, or social media constantly. Who turned life into a desperate race to escape any discomfort, as if discomfort were always bad, when in reality it's the only thing that makes us truly grow. The result is that we stop asking the important questions. Why am I here? What really matters? What's my purpose? These questions require deep reflection, and deep reflection is sometimes uncomfortable. It's easier to open your phone and get distracted, but every time we do this, we lose an opportunity to grow. We trade growth for comfort, and in the end, we're comfortable, but empty. Like people who spent their entire lives avoiding exercise and now don't have strength even to carry their own groceries. The soul also atrophies when it's not exercised, and here we arrive at the heart of Nietzsche's analysis. This was exactly what he realized over 100 years ago. He saw that humanity was losing its traditional and religious values, but wasn't finding anything to put in their place. People were becoming orphaned from purpose, and when you don't have a what for to live, all that's left is how to feel good. Pleasure becomes a cheap substitute for meaning, but it's a substitute that never really works. It's like trying to quench thirst by drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you get. Nietzsche called this nihilism. The feeling that nothing really matters, that life has no inherent meaning, and when nothing matters, all that's left is to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. Sounds logical, right? If there's no greater purpose, at least let's try to feel good. But Nietzsche saw that this was a deadly trap. A life dedicated only to pleasure is a life that confirms its own lack of meaning. It's like admitting that you're worth no more than your momentary impulses. That there's no difference between you and an animal guided only by basic instincts. The German philosopher wasn't interested in traditional moral judgments. He didn't think seeking pleasure was sin in the religious sense. He thought it was waste. It was criminally underutilizing human potential. Imagine having the capacity to create art that moves generations, to love deeply, to build something lasting, to transcend your limitations, and using all of this just to accumulate pleasant sensations. It's like using a Stradivarius to hammer nails. It works, but you're destroying something irreplaceable to do something any cheap hammer would do better. Nietzsche's critique of utilitarianism was devastating. The utilitarians, like John Stuart Mill, said the goal of life was the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. It seems like a beautiful and generous philosophy, but Nietzsche asked, what if humans are capable of something greater than happiness? What if reducing everything to a calculation of pleasure and pain is precisely what makes us mediocre? It's like asking what the best food is and only considering what has the most sugar. You'll find an answer, but you'll ignore complex flavors, interesting textures, culinary traditions, and entire gastronomic experiences. You'll reduce something rich and multidimensional to a single primitive variable. But perhaps Nietzsche's most frightening vision was his prophecy about humanity's future. He imagined a society so obsessed with comfort and pleasure that it would completely lose the capacity to create great things. He called this person the last man, someone who avoids any risk, any discomfort, any real challenge, who wants only small pleasures and small securities, who turned life into a predictable routine of working to consume and consuming to have fun. A person who gave up growing and just wants to maintain the comfortable status quo until they die. Look around you and see if this prophecy isn't coming true. How many people do you know who live on autopilot? They work Monday through Friday to pay for the weekend. They do the same things in the same places with the same people. They complain about life, but don't do anything to change it because change takes work and uncertainty. They watch series about people living adventures instead of living their own adventures. They prefer known dissatisfaction to unknown challenge. They choose safe mediocrity instead of risky excellence. And they go on living like this, day after day, until one day they wake up old and realize they didn't do anything that really mattered. For Nietzsche, this wasn't just sad. It was dangerous for the entire human species. A humanity that gave up growing is a humanity that's slowly dying. Like a garden that stops being cultivated. The plants don't die immediately, but they stop flourishing. Weeds take over. Beauty gradually disappears until only wasteland remains. And a life that doesn't flourish is a wasted life. No matter how many small pleasures it accumulated, it's the difference between being alive and just breathing. But then what's the alternative? If pleasure isn't enough, what is? Here Nietzsche offers his most radical and transformative answer: will to power. But be careful. It's not power in the vulgar sense of dominating other people or accumulating political power. It's power as growth, creation, overcoming your own limits. The impulse to become more than you are today, to expand your capabilities, to create something that didn't exist before, to transform yourself and, through that, transform the world around you. It's the vital force that makes us want to grow, like plants stretching toward the sun. Think about any area of your life where you really grew. Learning a musical instrument, mastering a sport, developing a professional skill, building a deep relationship, raising a child, founding a business. What you felt during that process wasn't exactly pleasure in the sense we're discussing. It was something different and much deeper. It was the satisfaction of seeing your limitations being overcome one by one, of discovering you were capable of much more than you imagined, of creating something new and valuable with your own hands, mind, or heart. This sensation isn't momentary like pleasure. It accumulates and transforms into genuine confidence, lasting pride, solid sense of identity. When you create something, when you overcome a real challenge, when you develop a part of yourself that was sleeping, you're not just feeling good, you're becoming a better and more complete version of who you were before. And this better version carries with it a satisfaction that no external pleasure can give or take away. It's the difference between winning the lottery and building a company, between having luck and having competence, between consuming something others made and producing something authentically yours. It's the difference between being a passive spectator of life and being the active protagonist of your own story. And here we arrive at another revolutionary concept from Nietzsche, amor fati, which means love of fate. But it wasn't passive and resigned acceptance of life. It was something much more courageous, embracing the entire life, including the difficult, painful, and challenging parts. Recognizing that suffering, obstacles, and uncertainty aren't bugs of human existence that need to be eliminated. They're essential features. These are precisely the experiences that force us to grow, to create innovative solutions, to discover strengths and capabilities we didn't know we had. A life that avoids all suffering is like a muscle that's never exercised. It becomes weak, atrophied, and useless. A life that systematically avoids all suffering is a life that systematically avoids all real growth. It's like wanting to be physically strong without ever lifting weights. Like wanting to be mentally sharp without ever studying something really difficult. Like wanting to have deep and lasting relationships without ever going through conflicts, reconciliations, and the hard work of understanding another person. Pleasure can and should be a natural consequence of a well-lived life. But it can never be the main objective, because a life focused exclusively on pleasure systematically avoids everything that could make it truly rich, meaningful, and transformative. Now let's get to the most provocative test Nietzsche created: eternal recurrence. It was a simple, yet devastating idea. He asked, if you had to live exactly the same life infinite times, with the same moments, the same choices, the same mistakes and successes, the same pleasures and pains, would you accept? A life built mainly on the pursuit of momentary pleasures doesn't pass this test. Because deep in your heart, you know you're wasting precious time, that you're postponing real life to live on crumbs of satisfaction, that you're spending your most valuable days on things that in the end don't matter to you or anyone else. But a life where you're constantly creating, growing, overcoming challenges, and contributing to something greater than yourself, that life you would live again with joy. Because even the most difficult moments had clear purpose. Even the most intense pains contributed to your growth and maturation. Even the most humiliating failures taught you valuable lessons that made you wiser and more resilient. This life has density, has existential weight, has accumulated meaning that goes far beyond a simple sum of pleasant moments. It's a life worth living, not just enduring or consuming. The great shift in perspective that Nietzsche proposes is radical, realizing that you're not here to be a passive consumer of pre-made experiences. You're here to be an active creator of values and meanings. Not values in the monetary or material sense, but values in the deeper sense of meaning, purpose, and contribution. You have the unique and precious capacity to look at the world around you and say, this could be better, and I can make a difference. This capacity to create meaning where there was none before, to see possibilities where others see only problems, is what makes us truly human. It's what separates us from animals that live only following basic instincts. When you make this fundamental shift in focus, from consuming to creating, literally everything in your life transforms. Your relationships become deeper and more authentic because you're not just seeking what you can receive and extract, but genuinely thinking about what you can contribute and offer. Your work becomes more satisfying and energizing because you're not simply selling hours in exchange for salary, but effectively solving real problems and creating genuine value. Your leisure moments become richer and more restorative because you're not just distracting yourself to escape reality, but consciously recharging your physical and mental energies to create even more. You stop being a tourist lost in your own life and become the conscious director of your own movie. Discipline also transforms completely. It stops being a painful sacrifice you force yourself to make and becomes an intelligent investment in your future. When you really know and feel that you're building something important and lasting, giving up immediate pleasures not only becomes easier, but naturally becomes gratifying. It's like an Olympic athlete who wakes up at 5 in the morning to train. They don't do this because they like to suffer or because they're masochistic. They do it because they have a clear goal that's much bigger than their momentary impulses to stay in their warm bed. And discovering that you're genuinely capable of defeating your own primitive impulses is one of the most strengthening and liberating experiences that exist. It's discovering that you're not a slave to your desires, but the master of your choices. Look at the people who really transformed the world throughout history. They weren't moved primarily by the pursuit of personal pleasure. Malala Yousafzai almost died fighting for girls' right to study, but continued her mission. Steve Jobs worked obsessively creating products that changed how we interact with technology. Frida Kahlo painted masterpieces while dealing with extreme physical pain. What moved these people was something much greater than the search for pleasant sensations. It was a deep will to create, to contribute, to leave the world a little better than they found it. And this transcendent motivation didn't diminish over time or with difficulties. On the contrary, it grew and strengthened through challenges. And it doesn't need to be something grandiose or world-renowned. It can be creating a solid and loving family, developing an artistic skill to the maximum of your capacity, building a local business that solves real problems in your community, completely mastering an art or craft, teaching something valuable to other people, mentoring young people, caring for the environment, or anything that forces you to grow beyond what you are today. Something that requires more courage, more competence, and more commitment from you than you currently possess. Something that forces you to develop. Something that, when you're old and looking back, you'll think with genuine pride, it was worth it. I created something that really matters and that justifies the fact that I existed. The fundamental difference between a life focused on pleasure and a life focused on growth and creation is that the first always leaves you dependent on external factors you don't control. You constantly need the world to offer you pleasant stimuli, pleasurable experiences, and external validation. You become hostage to circumstances. The second approach makes you genuinely independent and autonomous. You carry within yourself the capacity to create meaning, overcoming, and deep satisfaction. You become the primary source of your own fulfillment, not an emotional beggar waiting for the world to maybe give you some crumbs of happiness. Maybe not. You stop asking permission to be happy and take responsibility for the quality of your own existence. This transformation is also dramatically reflected in relationships. Relationships based only on mutual pleasure are fundamentally fragile because when novelty inevitably passes and natural conflicts appear, there's nothing deeper or more lasting to sustain the union. Relationships based on mutual growth, shared purposes, genuine admiration for what the other is becoming. These do resist and even strengthen over time. Because even when pleasure temporarily diminishes, deep respect, real partnership, and the common life project remain solid. Because you're effectively building something together that's bigger and more meaningful than you two separately. The same principle applies completely to work and career. A job you do exclusively for money to be able to buy external pleasures is fundamentally a golden prison. You're literally selling most of your conscious life in exchange for a few weekly hours of fun and consumption. But when you manage to find a way to contribute professionally to something you consider genuinely important and valuable, work becomes a natural extension of who you are. You're no longer selling time in exchange for money to buy external pleasure. You're investing your vital energy in something that has intrinsic meaning and clear purpose. It's important to make clear. The issue isn't to completely eliminate all pleasure from life. This would be not only impossible, but also harmful and unnecessary. The central issue is to fundamentally reverse the priority. Instead of living to have pleasures, you start having pleasures as a natural and spontaneous consequence of a well-lived life, full of purpose. Pleasure returns to being what it should always have been, a clear signal that you're on the right path, not the destination of the journey itself, like the genuine happiness you feel when you're doing something you really love and consider important. It's not the conscious objective, but the natural and inevitable result of being aligned with your deepest purpose. When you're genuinely building something important, developing your most valuable capabilities, or contributing to something greater than yourself, a magical thing happens. Simple and everyday pleasures regain real flavor and meaning. Food becomes much tastier when you feel you really deserve it. Rest becomes much more restorative when you've dedicated yourself intensely to something challenging and valuable. People's company becomes much more special when you have something genuine and interesting to share. Pleasure stops being an addictive drug you need in increasingly larger doses to mask emptiness, and returns to being a natural seasoning that enhances the flavor of a life with substance, purpose, and clear direction. Now you have Nietzsche's complete answer to the title question. Pleasure is never enough because it's just a symptom of a well-lived life, not the cause of it. When you reverse this natural order and make pleasure the main objective of existence, you're trying to live exclusively on symptoms. It's like trying to nourish yourself only on the smell of food. It works for a few seconds and awakens appetite, but soon you realize you're still really hungry. True and lasting satisfaction comes from discovering and developing what you're genuinely capable of, from creating values and meanings where they didn't exist before, from becoming a progressively better version of who you were yesterday, from contributing to something that will last longer than your own life and that justifies the miracle of your having existed. This isn't abstract philosophy for academic discussions. It's the concrete difference between a life worth living with pride and a life you spend trying to forget you're living. If this video made you think differently about your own life and priorities, leave your like and subscribe to the channel. We have much more content about how to build an existence with more meaning, purpose, and less dependence on external pleasures and constant validation. And in the comments, tell us, what's one specific area of your life where you could start trading passive consumption for active creation.